Thank you so much for joining me for a testimonial. I really appreciate it because I know that a lot of women will relate to what you share. And I've really been enjoying doing these interviews because it makes me feel inspired all over again about the course.
Mhm.
So, how did you find it? How was your experience moving through it?
Um, Affirming in some places. There's a lot of the practical elements of it that I am already doing with the techniques. Um, but also very insightful with some other aspects of the technique, and also the with the theory, with the whole embodiment of like your pleasure. Um, for me particularly, the reason that I wanted to do the course was because whenever I've given blowjobs in the past, it's always been very performative. I mean, sex in general was very performative. Um, it really kind of choked me up a little bit, actually. That's probably the wrong analogy to use.
Oh, yep.
Don't have to deep throat.
Wrong
Um,
kind of choking.
yeah, different kind of shaking. Um, but when you mentioned about the needing to like be a good girl, um, yeah, I'm working through a lot of that at the moment, and like rewiring things in my brain about how I can just show up as the goddess, as a wild woman. And as the reason I didn't put any makeup on tonight, because I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to perform. I'm just come out the shower. I'm about ready for bed here in the UK. It's just gone 10 o'clock.
You look
And
so
I can
real
show
and
up.
fabulous.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm owning that now. I'm starting to embody my natural beauty and my natural goddess energy, and without the need to be anything other than what I am, which is very pleasurable for me to be in that space and still be desired, not just by others, but by myself. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I found that quite moving when I was listening to that part of your practice, um, because we get to enjoy giving oral sex and having sex, and it not have to be this ridiculous, violent, porn star looking sexual act. And it actually gets to be nurturing and sensual. And yeah, so
It
I
gets
found
to
that.
feel good for you too, right?
Yeah, exactly. um so yeah.
So, I want to point out for anyone watching this that I have found for those that have gone through this that there's a pretty wide range of women that it appeals to. There are the ones that really aren't very into blowjobs and don't really feel like they know what they're doing and are very much kind of in beginner energy or confusion around it. And then there are women who enjoy them already and or think that they're good at them or have heard that they're from partners that they're good at them. And I'm loving hearing that uh, women across the spectrum are finding that there's still more to consider in this course, which was my goal because I wanted to speak to women about how they're approaching their own sexuality.
Mm.
Do you feel like watching this shifted how you think about blowjobs in general?
Yeah, yeah, I think it did. I think it See, I'm probably in the category of women that was fairly confident with blowjobs. I've been told that, I'm one of the best they've ever had. And again, no pun intended, I don't think it was lip service. I think it was very much um, probably the energy I was bringing in, maybe because there was a little bit of the performative side of me. I'm very good at being sensual. I used to be a stripper in my 20s, so I know how to do the doe eyes and
Mm.
be playful with it. But I was unknowingly tapping into that energy of
Mhm.
being playful and getting aroused by my own sensuality.
Mhm.
But the problem was I wasn't being completely present with it. It was still more about them than it was about me.
Yeah.
So now with what you've taught, I can go in and actually know that I don't have to deep throat and that I can focus more on the top, because I used to kind of cop out a little bit. I used to do a lot around the rim and the head, but then I felt like I needed to then deep throat. Like that was, and I do the massaging. I love the one over the top. That's brilliant. um, so there's, and also it's okay for me to take a break. Like I haven't got to punish myself to give them the best blowjob ever. It's got to be about my pleasure. So with all of those things, I'm really excited for when I get to put it into practice, and do a lot of the things I was doing before, but from a more present, aroused place and with the new techniques. So yeah,
Yes.
I'm really excited.
I would say that that is one of the main takeaways that I want women to walk away with this from, is the understanding that a lot of us know how to put on the performance. A lot of us know how to be sexy, and have learned how to perform that. And um, the bedrock of this course is I want all women to divorce that behavior, and instead stay engaged in their own experience and maintain a positive experience for themselves throughout, because we tend to be so automatically sacrificing because we're conditioned to be that way. And a lot of us will do it without even realizing it, without even thinking about it. It's just like, bam, bam. We're here to serve. Yeah. So I think, it's a simple yet incredibly profound shift, that, and just, locking in that understanding that men see and feel the difference in our enjoyment. They, that when they're giving that feedback, best ever, they're not talking about your technique ever. It's never the technique that they're talking about, because I mean, it's relatively simple. It's the vibes. It's the
Yeah,
energy.
definitely.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot at the moment about, well, I'm a holistic therapist and have been for over 10 years, so I know like how beneficial being in the right flow and vibe and with your energy can be. But particularly lately, as I've been training as a tantric therapist, it is incredible what you can do just with energy, and like hara, like sexual energy, chi energy. And that's what's glowing, that's what's emanating, and vibing between you and your partner. So exactly what you said, if the vibe's good, like both of you are feeding off that. And I have actually had an encounter where the we weren't neither one of us were fully present, and we couldn't go any further with it, if you know what I mean, because actually we were both feeling a bit ick about it. And yeah, like the body will just listen to what you're
Totally.
putting into it. So
If there's any ick present, the body's not gonna be like, yeah, I'm getting off on that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the reason why people also, have to be out of their heads to engage in sexual activity, because like real intimacy is actually, it's quite raw and vulnerable. So I think to be able to step into that space, you really have to surrender. And that's another thing with your workshop. The idea as a woman that I can surrender, and still be safe, and how important that is, because I think there is understandably a lot of angry women out there that feel like they can't step into that surrendering space because they don't feel safe, because they've had their faces raped and it's not been conscious or loving or nurturing.
Yep.
But when we can step into that feminine energy, and we do feel safe enough to kind of be in that soft flow, that nurture, into that, like that caregiving, wanting to, you know, honor the sacred masculine, it's
Mhm.
actually it does the opposite. Rather than feeling vulnerable and submissive, you actually feel more empowered. But yeah, I think it's hard for women to step into that space because of the experiences they've had in the past.
Isn't that interesting how stepping into submission feels empowering?
Mm.
Yeah. I think um, a submissive person is generally ultimately leading things, and because the person who is leading it when it's a healthy dynamic is making decisions based on what's happening with the person who's submitting. And so submission really is a position of power. But it does, I think that's such a kind of collective lesson that women are learning, is how to apply our discernment and recognize when safety is available, understand how to cultivate it within ourselves, which is something that I talk about in this workshop. And um, so that we can recognize it when it's available within a partnership.
Mm.
I think it's similar work as, working on our own emotional availability as well. Because I think that like the sexiest aspect of a hot blowjob underneath is the emotional connection.
Mm.
Um, it's you adoring each other. It's you wanting to be close to each other. So the more I was excited to take this whole conversation into that realm as well, because I think that collectively women have sort of been waiting for men to clean things up so that we can feel safe. And it doesn't really work that way. We have, we talk about like clearing the slate in this workshop. We have to do some inner work to like prepare ourselves to experience safety with someone,
Mm.
to not
And I do
be
think
closed off.
the feminine's going to lead the way, because that's the nature of the feminine energy, isn't it? Is to offer, that softness.
Yeah.
Like whilst we're all attacking each other and blaming each other for what we're not doing, we're never going to find a middle ground on it. And again, going back to the tantric journey, I found the amount of men that are in their own shame as well for expressing emotions, being in that softness,
Mhm.
and being in their sensuality, like, because they've all been labeled as predators and rapists, and there are predatory men out there, but there are also a lot of safe, gentle, loving men. And
Mhm.
I think that, again, like you were saying about the levels of discernment, but if you're able to tap into that, and also your own energy, like your nervous system will tell you straight away if someone is safe or not. And they might not necessarily be an unsafe person, but for whatever they're going through, that chapter of their lives, they might not be safe for you right now.
Mhm.
And I think I love the fact that you're teaching people how to get back into their bodies again, and their energy and their vibes, because as women, we're absolute creatrixes. So if we can drop back into that inner wisdom, then we're powerful as fuck. There's nothing we can't do, but we have to just slow down and listen, um, to that wisdom, and allow ourselves to let it flow, rather than having that resistance and, again, giving into shame and guilt and lack. I know it's easier said than done, but that's where the power is.
This course is my invitation to women to invite men deeper into their hearts. It's it is the answer to the pain exchange. It is like men need the love. They need the love, they need the acceptance, they need the feeling of welcome and invitation. And I mean, it is the thing that they cherish most from us, that feeling of being received. And
Mm.
this act is the ultimate act of feminine reception. We are fully receiving him and making it all about him in the process. And so my hope is that women receive this course as a giant love letter to both men and women, men in particular. And
So it's really interesting, actually, because 6 months ago, if I'd have seen your course and watched it, I would have had so much more resistance to it. I would have been like, why the fuck are we running around after men and doing that? Haven't we done enough for them already? Surely they should be pleasuring us. And I would have been really angry about it. But because of what I've been able to move through with my own wounded feminine and masculine energies and starting to soften and see that we're all sort of victims of a broken system, it's allowing me to receive that knowledge with much more ease and acceptance.
mm,
So, and there are no accidents, but I'm really grateful that I was ready to receive it the way I did.
mm,
And there's so much magic in there. And
mm.
it's, it's not just the technique, it's not just the theory, it's what you're shifting internally and energetically
It's a
of allowing yourself.
transmission.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is an energetic transmission in that course. And it's uh, for me, putting it together, I held a live class 7 times before filming that video course. And so what's in the videos is not just my experience and wisdom, but it's the amalgamation of all of these other women who had tricks they love and insightful things to say about our experience. And so I got to not only pour my own magic into this, but any other magic that was offered by these women who came together and around this intention of healing this. And I really think that you can feel that when you view it. It
Yeah,
feels
definitely.
very kind of generally applicable.
Mm. I think I said this too when we had a little conversation, but I found it very raw in places. Like there were bits where you were like a bit more giggly and playful, and it just felt real. It felt tangible because I think some of these workshop videos can be so polished, they almost lose that human vulnerability. And you know, whilst I'm feeling like I'm very liberal, but even I was like, oh, it's a massive dildo, and she's gonna sit
Massive,
on
I
that
know.
floor and she's gonna lick it and look at me with eye contact, and it's like, so my giddiness and your giddiness together. It was like I felt like I was there with you when I was in the room learning, and it just felt real, and we need.
It's an incredibly awkward thing to sit in front of a camera and suck on a dildo. And be explaining to the camera what you're doing. I it was incredible being supported by the women live when I was first doing it and kind of being received in that role. And the only way that I could get through the awkwardness of it was to make fun of myself and to be playful. 'Cause,
Well,
oh
it
boy,
added a whole another
I can't
beautiful
take
element.
myself too seriously with that giant thing in my face. Like, come on.
It was a perfect balance of everything. Yeah, it was playful, it was dynamic, it was insightful. And every time I was watching something and I was like, okay, I've got that as a question, you'd answer it later on. So it covered so many things. The only thing I wanted to ask you that came up for me was when we're surrendering to men, and because of the we've all kind of been brainwashed and conditioned into thinking that porn is, what sex should look like. I I really enjoy when I'm given a blowjob and the man puts his fingers into my hair, and there's a little bit of roughness, a
Mhm.
little bit of a grip, like,
Little
yeah.
direction.
Yeah, like I want that masculine, strong energy. And I even like a little bit of guided movement,
Mhm.
but I don't like the forcefulness of it. And again, that expectation of the deep throat. So men are just as sort of sensitive as we are. I mean, we're all grown ups, but there's a rawness and a vulnerability that happens when you're engaging in sex. And that again gave me a perspective with being a woman, like what is it that I would want to receive? That's really helped me to get inside the brain of a man. But if I was to not want to do that, like how would I do that in a way that would not reject him, but at the same time put my boundary in place and say this is not something that I want to do, with my head being forced whilst giving a blowjob?
Um, First question, this is, you have a current partner, right? You guys are regularly engaging, or no,
I know.
this is a
No.
future partner situation.
Yeah.
So you
Future
don't have a
partner.
lot of like rapport. Okay. Um, because there's two different scenarios. If you were in a relationship and you had rapport, my suggestion would be uh to create a conversation outside of sex about those preferences, just to have more neutrality and clarity around it, um and kind of avoid those vulnerability triggers a little more. In the moment, however, um, I will tell you that feedback in the moment uh, is one of my weakest areas. It's one of the areas where the
Cheers.
the the result of my trauma silenced me a lot in the bedroom, and I'm actually in my current relationship working on empowering myself to use my voice more, um to voice my experience more, um
Hmm.
because I when I the awareness of this whole topic and my inspiration definitely started with my own experience, and I learned how to cross my own boundaries as a way to like be sexy. And so I am still, having been working on this for a long time, and having all the awareness that I do, I am still running into moments in the present where I struggle to give feedback. So I wanted to presence that in response to this, because that's a nervous system thing. That's a like a a somatic, my body is learning that I'm safe in this scenario, and it's trying to tell me that I'm not safe, but I'm like negotiating with it, going, no, this is okay. you know. And so a lot of women, like, they have a nervous system response that happens in a moment when something is happening that they don't like. Do you think that that's something that happens for you? Like, if your head is pushed on and you don't like it, does your nervous system?
I'll do one of two things. So I'll either freeze, which is like not good because I'm disassociated from my body.
Right.
Um, and that is I've then withdrawn my consent effectively, but I've just not voiced it.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other side is that I fawn, and that is my trauma response. Is the
Mm-hmm.
good girl syndrome? Is
Act
that
like it's
I'll
fine. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll just play into it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and neither one of them I particularly want to do anymore. But I also don't want any trauma response. I don't want to fight. I don't want to flight it. I want to find a way of asserting that boundary where I don't fall into fawning,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also able to express my boundary in a gentle way, because I think that's the problem when you're learning how to assert boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
um you haven't had the practice, you haven't, it's like that conflict resolution, isn't it? It's almost like, oh, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do that. I want to be able to be like,
Wait.
this is,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. I think that if I were to be able to produce my perfect response in that scenario, my head is being pushed on and I don't like it, what I would do is probably reach for the hand myself and take it off, and maybe a nonverbal signal is enough, or even just like lightening it and kind of like using my face to make it clear, like, I don't really want you to do that kind of face. Or I might completely disengage and say, I prefer more gently, please, or something, framing in the positive what your
Mm.
preference is, um automatically will help with avoiding the feeling of rejection and shame. So it's instead of like, no, not that, it's I prefer this.
I
Um,
like that. So yeah, I prefer
I
this.
prefer more gentleness, or I prefer to have a little more depth control, or you know, but stating it as a preference, and then if it's an ongoing thing and you guys are developing a relationship around it, then again, I consistently recommend conversations about preferences in sex outside of sex,
Mm.
because it's just, even though it's kind of like weird and awkward to like start up those conversations and make it a little more clinical, it uh allows for so much more inhibition in the bedroom when like all that stuff's discussed, and you don't have to worry about the awkwardness.
And it can be done in a very nourishing way. Like again, because the tantric massage that I'm doing is separate from the tantric sex that I'm entering into, but because I'm learning so much about my body and what it is I like and I don't like, because I was codependent for so many years, I would morph into whatever my partner needed me to be, because I obviously did that as a child. Um, so like now I'm like, oh, actually, I didn't realize I had a bit of a toe kink, or, oh, I didn't realize that I like it when, I get breathed on my areolas. It's like there's so many little nuances of things that I had no idea were specific to my desire.
Make a
Um,
make a fun little conversational game around it. Like name your
yeah,
favorite things. Name your favorite surprising places to be touched and how. And yeah, generating positive energy around it. I really think the more you can like focus your lens positively around these conversations and around desires, the less you're going to run into the like trigger city of like, this isn't working the way we want it to.
yeah. And also like maybe like an element of just knowing that everyone's human. Like it's not always going to be looking
Mhm.
like a Love Actually movie. There's going to be awkward bits. There's going to be bits that you've forgotten that the other person does and doesn't like. And again, it can just have more invitation for more conscious conversation.
I am saying it in all of my intimacy work all the time. It is not possible to have connection without disruption to connection. And repairing our disruptions and our disconnection is just as necessary a relationship skill as being connected in the first place, and knowing how to do that. And I I love working in the arena of pleasure and sex because a lot of very smart people have learned how to rely on sex to deal with a lot of these intimacy issues, which works to a degree, but it doesn't actually create full, healthy, happy connection with each other and fulfillment. And,
Mm.
it feeds us this more uh, surface level experience with each other. And there's
If
just,
you've only met yourself so far and you're then using that as a coping mechanism for actually doing the deeper shadow work and getting to the nitty gritty, then yeah.
oh man, what a different world. Like sex as a coping mechanism versus sex as a connection activity,
Yeah.
just completely different realms and completely different pleasure experiences. Yeah.
It's honestly, and it's so ecstatic. Like I know I keep going back to the tantric stuff, but it is taught me so much about my body and like
Mm.
the realms of what reality is compared to what we think it is. So almost like a mushroom trip. It's almost like what we think is real, and then you go past that and you're like, oh,
Mm. Mhm.
this is incredible, and everything's shiny and it's bright, and it just you feel so much more connected. And
Mm.
that's that energy is just waiting for you to tap into. um and again, a lot of your practices for me were very tantric, like really tapping into all your senses and really engaging in the activity and how it feels in your body, like constantly checking in,
Mhm.
feeling into their vibe as well. And I really liked the bit where you were talking about, I think you said it was called the taint.
Mhm.
So in the UK, we call it the gooch. That's the nickname
Gooch.
for it.
Yep.
Gooch. And I didn't realize before I knew about Tantra that, because I used to massage it with my knuckle because I got good feedback from it. Um, I didn't realize that the prostate was there. And obviously now I'm learning that it is. And there is so much healing in the prostate for men. With a lot of links with, like, prostate diseases. It's on a cellular level, this is where shame is being stored. And men, because of a lot of fears about having penetration there, they're not being able to explore that fully and be able to release
Mhm.
all of that trauma. So,
Mhm.
being able to have that connection, even externally, and have it nourished and massaged, it's not just pleasurable, it's healing,
It's an
deeply
act of
healing.
love.
Yeah.
Massaging the gooch is an act of love.
It really is. It really is.
It really is. And it's it's wonderful to know that and to recognize that about men and to, like, I don't know, to just love them as they are and want to
Mhm.
figure out how to, like, give to them in the way that they receive the fullest. And yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Well, I'm going to assume uh, that this course uh, feels like an integral step on your intimacy journey.
definitely. Yeah.
And
It's for me, like I say, I'm learning a lot about my body, my desires, but stepping out of that wounded masculine energy, um, and honoring the masculine in his divinity, is definitely, there's been a lot of resistance in my body to that because I haven't had safe men
Mhm.
um, around me. But I am starting to see that there are safe men. And also, if I assume that every man is unsafe, then the law of attraction, I'm going to keep reliving that experience because that's the story that I've told myself.
Completely, completely.
So, yeah, no, with all the knowledge you've given me, I'm ready to kind of step out and be playful with it and, yeah, trust men again and give them what they
I had
need.
to do the same work, sister. I felt deeply betrayed by men and deeply harmed by them and had a negative opinion across the board. And then I had an awakening, the same one you're speaking to, that it doesn't work to generalize like that. It doesn't help anything or anyone. And I started actively looking for things to honor and respect in men in general. And I found so many, so many. And I've also connected with some really incredible men in the process of searching for that. And so I'm a big fan. And and I just really hope that the women who receive this course are able to communicate the love for men that the course is filled with to their partner, and that is felt by all involved.
Just watching it is enough to shift that energy. And I'm ready just to allow whatever's going to come in to come in. So I think any
I
woman
can't
that's listening,
wait to hear about your first practice.
I will keep you
Let me know
updated.
how it goes.
I will.
Thank you so much for spending the
Thank
time
you.
chatting about this.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom. It's been invaluable. I really appreciate it.
I'm gonna stop our recording here.